Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Monday Motivation Spotlight. I'm Lesley Kaplan after another emotional week, ups and downs, and this week is going to be similar. But that's what it's like living in this wonderful Eretz Israel of ours, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else, as I know many of you would not either. So today I have, as you all know, a special guest. I always have a special guest, and in a moment, for those of you that don't know, I'll tell you why. I would like to also mention and say thank you to Freddy, our guest today, because he actually stood in at the last minute. He has a fabulous story to tell, which doesn't mean that the fact that I added him at the last minute that he doesn't have a good story, but we were meant to have somebody else who fell ill at the last minute. So you know the saying that they say sometimes you don't have to look too far to find the best person to come on. So I didn't have to look too far because our guest happens to also be my husband, and many of you already know that. So let me actually spotlight him. And at the same time, I would also like to thank our co-host and our sponsor, Nardis Advisors, for sponsoring all our programs under the Israel Networking Hub. So I'm going to spotlight Freddy and replace my own. So good morning, Freddy. As what somebody said in the chat, you didn't have to come too far, but none of us have to come too far when it's online via Zoom. So who is Freddy Freundlich? So Freddy has spent well over 2 decades motivating and inspiring audiences. He's out of the box. He's got them to think out of the box as well. He's the CEO and co-founder of Tech Square, which matches companies that are wanting to get technology and match up with the Asian areas, which maybe he'll tell us a bit about. And Freddy's also the author of 2 books, Born on the Right Side of the Tracks and The Art of the One Call Close. Thank you, Freddy, so much, as I said, for filling in at the last minute. Your story, many of you I know have actually read his book, so many of you know his story, although today is not just about the book, but please share with us about your story, your Aliyah story, and inspire us like you inspire your other audiences.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Lesley, for the warm introduction. The Monday morning motivational talks began shortly after October 7th. And obviously, I had some insight to it, but the purpose has been to highlight inspiring individuals, people who can uplift us after what has been one of perhaps the darkest times in Jewish history since the Holocaust. Today, I'm in the spotlight, and I have the privilege of speaking to you. And yes, I do have a rather unique and unconventional story. To start with, as Leslie mentioned, I've always been someone outside of the box, which is not necessarily great. It just is what it is. And if you do get a chance to read my book, Born on the Right Side of the Tracks, I'm sure you'll have no doubt that I'm definitely out of the box. In my humble opinion, one of the things that made my book or makes my book such a compelling read is that what the reader will constantly ask oneself, how is this guy still here and in one piece? My story defies logic. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be speaking to you today. But every step of my life, especially regarding my childhood, I definitely had a guardian angel looking out for me. Now, the book itself is not just my opinion. I've received overwhelming feedback from readers. 99%, without exaggeration, tell me that not only did they enjoy the book, but also how deeply they could relate to it in one way or another. As I was preparing for this talk, realizing that the spotlight is on me today, and I'm meant to talk about my story, my aliyah, my business, all about me, I found myself asking myself, am I really that unique? Yes, I have what's called protexia, and perhaps that's why I'm the spotlight today. And yes, I have a really great story, but is my story that unique? And the short answer is yes, it's a very unique story. But at the same time, the truth is, so is yours. So is everybody else's. We're all unique. And that's what makes us so special. My story is is about an out-of-the-box kid stuck in an in-the-box world. That's my story. What's yours? Every one of you has a story. And while many of you might think, oh, my story isn't that interesting, let me assure you that couldn't be further from the truth. Sure, my life, especially my childhood, is filled with excitement, intrigue, and mystery. It might even make a great movie. But the truth is, my story and your story are interlocked. Each one of us are part of this great chain that stretches back thousands of years. And over the past 500 plus days, we have been more than ever collectively been living through a story of biblical proportion, one that echoes throughout history and will echo throughout history. Every one of us represents a teeny piece of this grand puzzle. And when one piece is out of place, it messes up this whole beautiful picture. I'm currently in the middle of reading a book. It was written in 1936 by a Hungarian Jew who was on the run from the Nazis. He was definitely an out-of-the-box thinker. And you have to picture the story. He's literally and figuratively on the run from the Nazis. His life is in danger every moment, and he's writing this book. And in this book, he's passionately arguing why the Jewish people should make Aliyah. Remember, this is 36. And he makes these incredible, what many people would think were predictions, but he wasn't making them as predictions. He was simply stating what he saw as the truth. But as I read this book, I realize so much of what he wrote has come to pass and is coming to pass. Now, tragically, this gentleman never had the opportunity to see Israel. He was brutally murdered by the Germans. But he made such a change and such a mark on people, even though, what did he do? He was just another one of millions who were murdered by the Germans, multi-millions who ended up being refugees and running. But his words, written in 1936, have an effect on me today. And reading his words made me realize that today's spotlight shouldn't be on me. It should be on you. Yes, each and every one of you listening to this talk, whether you're listening to it live or recorded. You know, there's an old joke about Jewish holidays. They tried to kill us, we cried, we won, and now we eat. Like most jokes, there's truth in it. And time again, history repeats itself. Our enemies never seem to learn. No matter how many of us they attack, no matter how cruel they are, and they try to be, and they look for more and more ways to be more and more cruel, they always fail at the end of the day. And not only do they fail, we come back stronger. And that's because we are all heroes. In every one of our stories that we tell about, when we think about all our holidays and all our stories, we always have the heroes coming up. We have Purim, so we have Mordecai and Esther. They're the big heroes, okay? But every holiday has their heroes. In October 7th and afterwards, we have loads and loads and loads of heroes, and more stories are coming out every day. And these are sort of the spotlighted heroes. But I'm here to tell you that you guys, every one of you, is a hero. And part of the reason that makes you a hero is just by showing up and living your life. This is why we're still here after all these years. We're here because we don't quit. There are a lot of jokes about how stiff-necked and stubborn Jews can be. May be true, but this is what makes us a hero. Each and every one of us has a story. And while some may be more dramatic than others, every story matters. Each of us is a vital link in an unbreakable chain, a chain that does not weaken, but only goes stronger with time. I know that in moments of pain, it can be hard to see the bigger picture. Yes, we have lost battles, and we will unfortunately lose more, but we are winning the war. And this is what frustrates our enemies, and frankly, much of the world. But make no mistake, we are winning. And we are winning because of you. Each and every one of you is part of this team, and we need every person to do their part. So something that's, I think we all think about as humans, we think many times, what is my part? And we all feel that there's something in us, something that sort of wants to jump out, something that God put in us to be something greater than we are, but we can't figure it out. And then we look at heroes and we're in such awe of these people, which we should be. But please bear in mind, real heroes are ordinary people who rise to the occasion. They don't plan on being heroes. They don't know they're going to be heroes. They may not even like being called a hero, but they're heroes because they rise to the occasion. And what is the first step of being a hero or just doing your part? It's simply showing up. Now, beyond that, I challenge each of you, if you haven't already done this, is to create some sort of a vision board or personal mission statement about what you personally want in your life for yourself, your family, your people, your country, whatever. Just some broad mission statement. And once you've done that, and a very simple thing, less than one page. And once you have that, make it a habit to look at it every morning and ask yourself, what can I do today to advance my vision? Now, I won't sugarcoat it. Most days won't go exactly as planned. Some days you may feel like you've accomplished nothing. But I promise you, if you stay committed to your vision, you will strengthen your link in this chain in ways you never imagined. Let me share a story that illustrates just how powerful our actions, no matter how small they can be. Excuse me. I was 21 years old, living in the United States, and I was planning a vacation to South America. One of my sisters got me on the phone, and she said to me, "Why are you going to South America? You've never been to Israel." I never did that gap year, never did any of that stuff, never been to Israel. She said, "If you're really going to go and hang out someplace, go to Israel." I literally hung up the phone with her and called TWA. This shows you how far back we're going. And I booked a flight for the very next day. I bought myself a 1-year open ticket. I figured I'd be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but I wanted to, give myself, I had no real obligations in those days, wasn't married, no family. I could take off from my job. All was cool. So I just took a backpack, nothing more, and I came to Israel. Now, there are so many stories that I can tell you about that. And I'll just tell you one quickly that comes to mind, which is not really the part of what I want to share, but I'll share it anyway, about angels in life and heroes. I came to Israel literally not telling anybody I was coming. I had friends I'd grown up with, I had family here, but I had no clue where I was going. I just literally got on a plane. And I got off the plane. It was evening time, and I got on a bus figuring I'd go to Jerusalem, get a hotel there. On the bus, couldn't sit. There was only standing room only. Some stranger starts talking to me. And I can't even remember all the details. All I know is he invited me to what they call couch surf at his house that night to spend the night. Well, I ended up spending 2 nights there as I got myself acclimated to figure out where I was going to go. The point is, to this day, I don't remember who he was. Don't know who he was. Was he a prophet? Was he Elijah the prophet? Who was this angel, this guardian angel? I don't know. But he was in the right place in the right time for me. He was a hero, an unsung hero for me. He literally changed my life. Anyway, going back to my story. So we fast forward nearly 10 years later. I never went back to the States. I mean, I went back to visit, but never went back to live. I ended up staying here. And 10 years later, I was married with 2 kids and a dog. My wife, who I'm no longer married to, we decided we wanted some adventure in our life while our 2 kids were still in preschool or that young. So we decided to move to the States for a few years. And after a few years, we had to make a decision because life was good in America. Would we return to Israel or stay in the States? Our oldest child was about to enter the 6th grade, and we felt it would be unfair to keep delaying our choice. We had to make a decision. So my wife, at the time, who was Israeli, had come back several times to visit during our hiatus, but I hadn't returned at all. So we decided that I would take a sort of 2-week pilot trip and I would make the decision as whether to come back or not. And my wife was very cool about this. She said, again, even though she had family here, she was Israeli, life was good for us. She said, I'll leave it up to you. Every day during that 2-week trip, I'd call my wife in the evening. And one day I'd tell her, Israel is amazing. We need to come back. The very next day I'd say, Israel's great, but we're having a good life in the US. We're not coming back. And this back and forth literally went on for 2 weeks. One day, one thing, one day the next. Finally, on the last day of my trip, I made my final decision. I called my wife and I said, I don't want to return. I want to stay in the US. And she said, fine, if that's your decision, I'm behind you. So my flight was scheduled to leave early the next morning. And I decided to spend the night at my cousin's house who lived near the airport. And what happened was that evening, I got to his house. We were going to hang out together. And I asked him to call a taxi and negotiate the fare for me. And we all know why I did that, because if they heard my American accent, they jack up the price. So we called them back and forth, and he arranged the price. I'm remembering 50 shekels. Don't hold me to it, but let's say 50 shekels. So early the next morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, the taxi arrives. The driver was the stereotypical, quintessential Israeli taxi driver. He had pictures of the Rebbe of Chabad, the Babi Sal on the dashboard, a book of Tehillim, of course, no kippah on his head. We all have that picture. And of course, he was incredibly friendly. When I got there, he kind of got out of the car. I had just a carry-on because in those days you could check your bags early, which I'd done. He took my carry-on, put it in the trunk of the car, and we're on our way. And the whole way to the airport, he's just, as I said, as friendly as can be, chatting away and asking me why we're there, why I'd come to Israel. And when I told him, he said, oh, you must move back to Israel. This is where you belong. And this is the whole thing that's going on, okay? I want you now to realize where I was. I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and I'm telling you, literally ready to have a heart attack. My pulse is racing. I feel my heart is about to explode. Because every time this guy opens his mouth to tell me something great, nice, I'm thinking he's going to overcharge me. I'm convinced. Because those of you who've many of you have been Olim know that sometimes the Anglos or anybody with an accent could be taken advantage of. And I'm sure he's gonna mess me up. I am sure about it. And this whole trip, it's only 15, 20 minutes to the airport. On the one hand, he's as nice as can be. He's an angel. And all I'm thinking about, oh my God, he's gonna be charging me 60, 70, maybe even 80 shekels. What am I gonna do? And really, I am surprised that I just didn't have a heart attack at that time. Okay, we finally arrive at the airport. He gets out, takes my bag from the trunk, hands it to me, shakes my hand, and says to me, now remember, the price is supposed to be 50 shekels, right? He goes to me, that'll be 40 shekels. At that moment, I said to myself, and I kid you not, we're moving back to Israel. Now, you guys probably think I'm nuts. For 10 shekels, that's what made the decision. I decided to uproot my family, my life, everything for 10 shekels. Obviously, it wasn't 10 shekels. Human beings are emotional creatures. We're not logical ones. Now, I have no idea why this driver gave it to me for 40 shekels. Did he make a mistake? Did he do it intentionally? Did he think it was 30 shekels and actually want to screw me and charge me 40 shekels? Irrelevant. Regardless, that driver, again, who's just a passing, never know. For all I know, he may not even be alive today. No idea who he was, but he changed my world. He didn't only change my world, he changed your world. He changed all of Israel's world. We don't necessarily know in what way, but we know at the very least, all 5 of my children served in the Israeli army, something that never would have happened had we remained in the United States. That man had no ideas how many lives that he touched. But he was a hero. Because of him, 5 more than 5, but a minimum of 5 more Jewish souls settled in Israel, are raising families, having businesses, served in the army, etc. So that man had no idea how many lives he would touch by one little act of kindness. And neither do you. Imagine at the end of our journey, we're shown a movie about all the ripple effects of our actions. Granted, some things would not be so pleasant. The truth is, though, we'd be astounded about how many lives we touched, how many people we influenced, even in the smallest way. And there is no such thing as the smallest way. We have no idea about the domino effect, the butterfly effect, whatever you want to call it. Now, some outcomes may not always be what we hope for, but that's beyond our control. And sometimes we're blessed to see the fruits of our labor. Most of the time, we're not. But I promise you that if we make that effort, if we have that vision and we work towards our vision, not only will our lives change, but everyone around us, because return to where I started, that we are a link in a chain. And where the chain is only as strong as each individual link. In my book, on the back of my book, one of the things I wrote is that we're all dealt, when we're born, we're dealt a hand of playing cards, of cards. We have no control over the cards we're dealt, but we do have control of how we play those cards. So what is in our control is our attitude and the direction of life that we take, the direction in life we take. Um, I just want to say, ladies and gentlemen, that the power of one person is immeasurable. And that person is you. I can't say enough how much gratitude I personally have for people like you, for the people who cross my path every day and bring things into my life, which I don't really appreciate at the time. But when I think back, how immeasurable this one person doing one tiny thing has an effect on me, which ultimately has an effect on everybody else. Anyway, that's my talk for today. I want to thank you very much. If anybody is interested, by the way, I will place a link to my book if anybody is interested in reading it. And thank you very much. Back to you, Lesley.
Okay, thank you, Freddie. You know, it's funny. I never discuss with my guests beforehand what they should or shouldn't talk about. I leave it in their own hands. And all I say to them is keep it apolitical because we're an apolitical podcast. So when your husband is the guest, of course, you're a little bit curious to know what he's going to talk about, which things to include, which things not to include. And guess what? He wouldn't share it with me. He said, leave it to me. I'm your guest and I'll share with whatever comes to mind. And there's a lot more, of course, that he could share. That I guess you'll have to wait and read the book. And it is a fascinating one. I'm not just saying that because I am his wife. But thank you, Freddie, for being our guest. Thank you for filling in at the last moment. And you were super inspiring. And that's the aim of the game, that we choose to have super inspiring guests. So I'm Lesley Kaplan, wishing Am Yisrael a good, safe week. As I said, we have a challenging week ahead, but who knows? Hopefully, we will find the positive bits amongst the challenges too. Thank you again to our sponsor, Nardis Advisors. Thank you to those of you who joined live. It's always wonderful to see you live. And of course, if you're watching the recording as well, and you can rewatch this as well as many other amazing speakers on my Spotify or on my YouTube channel too. So have a safe day. Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you again, Freddie. And we will see you again next week on the Monday Motivation Spotlight. Bye-bye.